Hi, how are we all doing today? My name is David Gugino, and in today's book review, we've got an interesting one today. It is about it's about 8:30 at night, and I wanted to wrap this up before I relax for the evening. And right now, we are reviewing a book that is about sales. And as crazy as it sounds, this book, before I started my self-betterment journey and my reading journey, this is the very, very first book that I read. I saw it on Amazon, I ordered it, and then 5 years later, we've been reading a couple of books every year. So this was the book. This was the very first book that I bought myself and read because I thought it looked interesting and I read all the way through it. I actually didn't tell you guys at all. When I started my reading journey, I read 10, 15, sometimes 20 pages a day, and I kept that habit for the last 5 years. How did I do it? Well, to read those pages, depending on what book you're reading, it takes at least maybe 15 minutes. But also not just that. I didn't realize I liked reading. I didn't realize how good I was retaining at what I read. I didn't realize how I would use the stuff in the future when I read it. And I also didn't realize how easily of a habit it was to read 10 pages. I do 10 pages a day now, to read 10 pages a day. And I did not know that, but this was the very, very first book that I read when I started my journey. Called If You're Not First, You're Last by Ricky Bobby. I'm just kidding. It's actually by Grant Cardone. Sales strategies to dominate your market and beat your competition. So for those of you who don't know, Grant Cardone owns a lot of real estate, owns apartment buildings, and that is his main thing that he does. And I believe he sells books and sells programs to be rich, like he is in the selling and in the property business. Now, what drew me to this book was I actually read in high school the 10X rule, and it was basically, the book was about everything you do in life, do it 10 times better in order to be successful. So I read that book, and then I didn't realize how rich he was and how good his stuff was. I started doing some research on him. I started watching his videos. And this was years ago. I don't do much of that now. But I really liked what he said, and I realized how wise he was when it comes to this kind of stuff. And then I was looking through a list of books. I found If You're Not First, You're Last. And then I ordered it. And then actually pretty soon after, I watched Talladega Nights. And I thought that was pretty funny. But this was the book that I've read. We are going to dive into it. This was the very first one I read. And throughout this, I'm going to let you know on certain things that from this book, but from what I've learned through just simply reading for the last 5 years, every day, almost every day, reading 10 to 15 pages. So I'll fill that in when I get into this, or throughout this book review for today. But now let's dive into the book. So, this is in like the beginning where it's called Past Client Reactivation is the name of the section in the book. It's on page 37, and I don't know the name of the chapter, but let's dive into this here. So listen to this. Do exactly the opposite of what those around you are doing, and more often than not, you will be assured success. The call itself is not a science, so do not agonize about whether you're saying the right thing. Remember, action counts more than anything. Don't spend time worrying that this person will be upset with you because you haven't spoken to him or her in a while. Trust me, your customers haven't spent every day since you last sold to them wondering why you haven't called. The reality is that they have probably forgotten you, and that's exactly the problem. During tight times, you cannot afford to have anyone forget you. Those who get the most attention and stay top of mind will exit the situation stronger than their competitors. So think about that. And then in the next section, it says, remember, contacts turn into contracts. And the more contacts, the more contracts. Embrace the challenges that others avoid and use them to create opportunities to propel yourself, your products, and your services. So, let's look back over here. Those who get the most attention stay top of mind will exit the situation stronger than their competitors. You cannot afford to have anyone forget you. So basically that means those who stay on top of mind and think about you more, and you don't contact them and you don't get back with them or anything, they will leave the situation strong, like they're stronger than their competitors, basically. They will leave you to contact you. So the competitor might be like, oh, I'll just leave them because they haven't called back. But if you haven't made an effort to call them after selling to them, then they're going to leave than you just saying, alright, I'm done now because you haven't called me. So it's kind of a weird thing to think about, but the reality is they have probably forgotten you, and that is exactly the problem. During tight times, you cannot afford to have anyone forget you. Those who get the most attention and stay top of mind will exit the situation stronger than their competitors. A call to a past client would begin a lot like the call to those in your power base. You let him or her know what you're calling to catch up, and ask briefly about not only the person, but also his or her family or business. Try to keep the small talk to a minimum so that you can address your other objective. The second reason I'm calling is to see if there's anything I can do for you at this time to enhance the investment you made with us. Continue by asking questions about how your product is working, what the client is satisfied with, and whether there's anything that he or she is not satisfied with. That for a second. Just simply think about what that means. Now, as we go into the second part of this book, so when I did read this book, I remember I was working at a metal factory at the time, and I was coming home, I prepared for work, and I was reading about 10 pages before I sat down and watched TV at the end of the night. I remember every time I read, I was like, wow, I cannot believe this is a habit, and I can't believe I'm actually doing this. And I noticed, after the first few books that I've read, I realized how smarter I was, how I viewed life more differently, and how I also viewed certain things I went through, things that God threw at me, and how I viewed them as a good thing rather than as a bad thing, and how I didn't let it take control of me. And that is what I have mainly learned through reading. Do not be mad at things you cannot control, because you can't control it. You can't. It is just thrown at you, but it's thrown at you for a reason. Now, the second part that I've read that I really enjoyed in this book is Delivering at Wow Levels is the name of the section. You don't want customers just to be satisfied. You want them wowed. The wow experience is actually easier to accomplish during bad times than good, because your competitors are so locked up on problems during downtimes that their ability to deliver a positive experience has likely deteriorated. They become victims of the economy because they have no intention of creating their own economy or understanding of how to create one. And they perpetuate these declining conditions without even thinking in terms of wow. It becomes very difficult and maybe impossible for them to think in terms of wow when they are completely committed to wow is to whoa. I think he says whoa. It is essential that you go above and beyond to impress consumers when they tighten up financially and become more selective. Delivering a wow experience gives you a much better chance of separating them from what they are being told is so precious and vital to their survival. Their money with the media's constant reminders of doom and gloom during times like these. The wow part of an experience is the only thing that prompts customers to actually tell you yes. Important rule to remember: price is never the way to create a wow experience. So I know that was a lot, but that thing at the bottom, price is never the way to create a wow experience. We've all had times where we paid to go see a movie and it was awful. And then we've all had times where we paid to go see a movie and we're like, you know what? We didn't really have to pay to go see that movie in theaters. We've also had those times where we bought a product and it's not as good as people say it is. And then we've also had those times where we've overspent on something and we're just like, I just can't believe I spent that much money for that. Like, I liked it, but it was that much money. So when it comes to being wowed, I know that can mean a ton of specific things, but also when you're selling to somebody, you don't just want them to be satisfied. You want them to get more returns on it. You want them to make more money with their product if they can, depending on what the product is. You want them to be wowed enough to where it can do a bunch of things for their life and possibly change the way they view life and change the way they view their finances. But that's what I think being wowed means. Just selling in general, you don't want your customers to be satisfied. You want them to be like, oh my gosh, wow. You want them to be so astounded that it's crazy how in they are into their product. but also just being satisfied. No one's going to be satisfied. Now the customer's satisfied. They're not. They'll probably buy from you one time and not buy from you again. So that's also something to think about. People are not just satisfied. Now the other thing I have in here is delivering a wow experience gives you a much better chance of separating them from what they're being told is so precious and vital to their survival, their money. With the media's constant reminders of doom and gloom during times like these, the wow part of an experience is the only thing that prompts customers to actually tell you yes. An important rule to remember, price is never the way to create a wow experience. So just think, I know I read that twice, but delivering a wow experience gives you a much better chance of separating them from what they are being told is so precious and vital to their survival. Their money. Their money. Now, the thing I read at the beginning, you don't want customers just to be satisfied, you want them to be wowed. The wow experience is actually easier to accomplish during bad times than good because your competitors are so locked up on problems during down times that their ability to deliver a positive experience has likely deteriorated. So that's another thing too. Your competitors or people that are selling against you, some of them might be emotional, some of them might think of all the bad things that are happening in their life and not sell well, and then some of them just might be blaming society as to why their business isn't going and as to why they're in a bad mood or stressed out all the time. But, like you said here, delivering a positive experience has likely deteriorated. Yeah, for your competitors it probably has, but that's why I said in my last video, being optimistic and having a positive mindset towards things gets you so far in life. So far in life. And when I say so far, I mean you might have the same job, but the way you, like your happiness will change more and more, and the way you view things will be so much better than being like, oh, my life sucks, because in reality your life doesn't suck. Some things might happen to you that might suck, but your life does not suck. God is keeping you alive for a reason, and God put you on this earth for a reason. And He gave you a life, and He gave you a plan. And I actually read a quote from somebody that, be very thankful that you woke up this morning. Why? Because God certainly did not forget to wake you up. So just think about that. When you wake up every morning, God doesn't forget to wake you up. He lets you wake up for a reason. So just think about that. Now the third and final thing that I have, and if you're not first, you're last, is something pretty good. Now, when I read this book, I used a little bit of the stuff because it was a sales book, but in reality, I just learned about how to sell people, but I used the skills that I learned to talk to other people. Not in a weird way, but to sell myself so I'm a good person overall. Like when I served tables, I remember getting a job selling insurance because I did such a good job serving them, but I also had personality and I had somewhat decent looks, but I was doing a good job serving them and I got a job selling insurance for a little bit. But the thing is that the pay starting off was not good, and I was not patient enough to get certified. And I kind of regret that about my life, but I mean, I regret it, but I don't regret trying, because I was really nervous to try. But that is something I do not regret. So, when I was reading this book, I learned and realized how easy it is to read. I also realized how rare it is for people to read, because when you're in high school or when you graduate high school, some people stop reading completely and they stop educating themselves completely because they believe they're done. Actually, college, I think is what it is. College, they get their education and they don't stop reading or don't stop doing anything until like never sometimes, which is sad. And when I say until, I mean until, sorry, I'm tired, or until they realize, hey, I do not know much since college and I want to learn something. Something to think about. Continue to always educate yourself and continue to read. Read, read, read. Leaders are readers. And I don't care who you are, people will be very amazed by what you read, what you've done with the stuff you've read, and just having the hobby of reading, people will be amazed by that. They really will. So, the next thing that I have, and the third and final thing to this book, because this book review's been a little all over the place. I'm tired. I've had a long day. I've had off today, which I guess isn't an excuse, but it's been a day. It has been a day. Now, the third thing that I have for you in this book is the value-added proposition. So listen to what I have here. Listen to what "if you're not first, you're last" has to say about the value-added proposition. In my experience, one of the reasons people stall when it comes to decision making is due to negative past experiences. The more unique you can make the proposition appear, the more success you will have in overcoming people's tendency to delay making a choice. For example, I own apartment buildings, and when things tighten up, people shop more diligently. Apartment for the least amount of rent. Because other apartment owners are feeling the pressure, they will start to reduce their rents, which puts downward pressure on my properties and their rental incomes. I don't want to be compared to the apartment building down the street and be forced to drop my price. Therefore, I look for creative ways to add value to my property, so that we keep our occupancy high, erode our revenues. I distinguish myself from my competition by offering unique value-added options. When you start thinking of how to solve problems creatively without lowering prices, you will come up with great propositions. So what really spoke to me when I read this is that when he is looking for somebody, they don't want to have to lower their prices to buy something, so he doesn't have to lower his prices for people to buy. He just makes what they're buying better, so there's more value in it. They'll value it more, so he doesn't have to lower the price or anything like that. Like, he might add maybe an extra room, he might add some electricity in there or some Wi-Fi. And when I say add, he might lower the, well, actually he doesn't lower the price at all. He might add this, he might add that. He will add something to the building that makes it so unique where people are like, huh, I'll pay the price for it. I'll buy it if I do that. So when it comes to value-added proposition, you just make it better. That's what Starbucks is known for, the multi-million, if not billion-dollar franchise of Starbucks. They make coffee, they just made it better than most coffee places. So you don't have to lower your prices in your business. Just make it better so people value it more. And that's also the takeaway from this video. Do something of value. Do something that you value yourself, and do something for other people so they can value you. Or actually no, the takeaway of this video is make something better. Make someone's day better. Make reading better. Make reading a positive experience. Make your job better. Just make your day, make your life, and make people better. And when I say make people better, make them feel better. So make it better is the takeaway of this video. I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you all for listening to me read and listening to me life's journey with reading. And I know it took some time, but I managed to continue to read. I managed to keep it a habit for the last 5 years, and I managed to learn so much more about life than most 24-year-olds, but I do want to thank you all for sitting through this video. I want to thank you all for, if you are doing this, taking the advice in these books and even wanting to start a reading journey of your own. But I don't regret it. It doesn't take long. I'm probably going to read for the rest of my life. I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day today. Thank you.